John, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Sean. Great to be with you.
So we were just talking a little bit off camera, obviously, before we started recording about why you have, we started the timer first of all, and then you have Einstein in the background. And tell me a little bit about what kind of represents that.
All right. So, the timer over here is to remind me that all the time that has passed in my life, I can use that as a guiding post, as lessons, as time gone by, and what did I garner from those lessons, the good, the bad, the challenging, the ugly, and to do it without judging, blaming, or shaming myself, and just use it as an experience. It's to remind me that I don't know how much sand I have left in my life. And the only thing that I can control right now is what I do in time now and how I look at the past in a way that empowers me instead of disempowers me. So it's a constant reminder that the time is running out on all of us. Life is extremely precious. And one of my heroes from when I was a kid was Bruce Lee, and he said, if you value life, then you will value time. So I value time. So that was like one of the things up there. My family, of course, up there. Over here, I've got part of the Stein cousins. This is Frankenstein's monster. And this is Einstein. That's my best-selling book, but that's Einstein. And it's to remind me of what I study every single day, and that's the human brain. And there's a part of me and you and everybody else that's got genius capabilities and imagination and deductive reasoning. And it's the CEO, the executive director of my brain. But every one of us has this Frankenstein's monster, that in sometimes says, you're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not skilled enough to achieve that. What if you fail? What if you lose money? What if you lose time? So it's that negative little, thing on my shoulder at times that I have to counterbalance with the Einstein imagination, grandiose thinking part of my brain as well. So my job is to be aware that both exist. And my job is to understand I'm neither one of those parts. I can use those parts of my brain no differently than I can use my car or I can use my e-bike. I get to drive it any way that I want, and it's my choice on how good I get at playing that game.
I can see why they call you the brain whisperer, John. Where did this fascination of the brain, being able to overcome your limiting beliefs, to helping others, where did that come from? I'm curious because you've got a background. I think a lot of people that are in this space sometimes have not actually built a very successful career and had kind of this pathway of very successful for transitioning into helping people overcome their limiting mindsets and helping people kind of see a different perspective of their life. But you've grown Remax of Indiana from a startup to selling it for over $4 billion. Or you sold the products for $4 billion a year. You're also one of the founders of Bamboo, and that went public. So you've actually really built real things, which is something that gives you a lot of credibility. But how did that transition from building massive companies to becoming the brain whisperer? Was that something you were always fascinated with?
No. When I was younger, I'm 63 now. When I was in my 15, 16, 17 years old, I was getting in trouble with the law. I was failing at school. D's and F's were like, those were my A's and B's. I fell 2 years behind when my parents moved from where I was born, which was Israel, to Montreal, and they spoke English and French there. And I got behind. There were a lot of immigrant kids that were in the classroom, 50, 60 kids. And I just fell behind. I thought I wasn't really smart because I didn't do well in school. I didn't do well on the tests, got into a lot of fights. And then I got involved with a small little street gang that imported drugs, sold drugs, did breaking and entries, got into fights daily. And I was voted like most likely to fail in life and a derelict. And my brother, who was concerned for my well-being, thinking I'm going to go to jail in the morgue because one of my friends died and one of my friends went to jail that was in this small little street gang. I said, hey, there's this guy that I teach tennis to. My brother was a tennis pro. And he said he's a very successful real estate entrepreneur and a philanthropist, and he loves to help people. And would you be willing to come to Toronto and talk to him? And I used to live in Montreal at the time. I said, yeah, I'll come to Toronto for the weekend. So I took a train on a Friday morning and met this guy. His name was Mr. Alan Brown. And we sat at lunch. And he asked me a whole bunch of questions of what did I want to achieve. And at the time, I remember telling him I was working in a factory in a shipping department. I was 19. And I was making $1.65 an hour. And I told him I wanted to make more money. He says, well, good. Everybody wants to make more money. I said, I want to buy a car and I want to move out of my parents' home. He said, that's all nice and dandy, but like, what are some of your big goals and dreams? I didn't have any. I didn't have any big goals and dreams. I didn't know that I could or should have big goals and dreams. And even when I saw somebody else with nice cars or nice homes, that was for them, not for people like me and my family. My father was a cab driver. My mother worked as a seamstress, and they never had enough money at the end of the month. There was always arguments and fights about money. But this guy started to talk to me. It started making sense. And he asked me, like, could you do some imagination, some dreaming for me? And I said, well, of course I could. And he gave me this document, Sean. And he said, answer some of these questions. So I opened up the page. And the first question was, at what age do you want to retire? And I was 19. I was like, retire? I want a good job. And I asked him, what should I put there? And he said, pick a number. And I goes, like 45, okay? It was 25 years older than I was. He said, sure, put it down. And they said, next question was, how much net worth do you want to have when you retire? And I looked at the document, I looked at him, I felt stupid. And I said, what does net worth mean? And he explained what net worth was. And what am I supposed to put there? And he goes, well, if you want to retire well, then you probably need, a few $1 million. So I said, is 3 million okay? And he said, of course it's okay. Write it down. So I wrote down 3 million. What kind of home do you want? 4-bedroom, double car garage, a half-acre lot. I wrote that down. Who do you want to help? I want to retire my parents. Where do you want to travel? All over the world. How would you like to travel? First class. What kind of clothes do you want? Oh, easy, Italian. And I just wrote down all this stuff that was just made up shit. And he takes this document when I was done in 7-8 minutes. And he said to me, he says, this seems like a life that would be worth living and you'd be proud of it, right? I said, God, are you kidding? Retire, money, house, car, travel? Of course I'd love it. He goes, I'm going to ask you one question, and the answer to this question will determine whether you achieve every one of these things. And in the back of my mind, Sean, I was thinking, yeah, right, one question. And I remember this like it was yesterday. He leaned in and he said, son, are you interested in achieving this life and all of these things? Or are you committed to achieving them? And I kind of scratched my head wondering, interested or committed? So I asked him, felt dumb again. I asked him, I said, excuse me, sir, what's the difference? And he looks at me and he says, when you're interested in achieving something, you allow your present circumstances to control your thinking and your behaviors. You allow what you believe to be true to be true. He says you allow your habits to remain the same habits, thereby giving you the same results over and over again. He said, but when somebody is committed, I'll never forget this. He said they will upgrade their identity, who they believe they are, to match the vision, goals, and destiny that they want. He said they upgrade their beliefs, they upgrade their skills, they upgrade their habits, and then they take action every single day until they achieve those goals. And I remember the hair was standing in the back of my head when he said that. And he leans in, he says, so, young man, are you interested or are you committed? And he points at the document that I had written all these things out. Sean, I don't know why. I was 19, a little cocky, arrogant, ignorant, stupid. I just said, well, in that case, sir, I'm committed. And he takes out his hand, puts it across the table. He says, good. In that case, I will be your mentor. I go, wow, what's a mentor? And he told me what a mentor was. 5 weeks later, I moved from Montreal to Toronto. I went back to real estate school, got my real estate license on June 20th, 1980. You weren't even born.
Wow.
I went to work for him on commission. I went from $1.65 an hour, went backwards. I went to work on commission, but then he taught me how to train my brain, how to visualize the goals I wanted to achieve. He had me create these affirmations. I'm so happy and grateful for the fact that, and my first goal was to make that I'm making $10,000 a month. This is back in 1980. I was making $1.65 an hour. And I used to read these affirmations. I put my hand across it left and right because he said it would send a signal to my brain. I would visualize it. I would feel it, pretend that it was true. I would practice it, even though there's a part of me, that Frankie's monster, that would say, bullshit, that's not true. You're not making 10 grand a month. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough. And he just told me how to override it. And then, a week later, 2 weeks later, 4 weeks later, 8 weeks later, I started to walk a little differently. I started to believe that. And within 6 months, I made $31,000 for me, which means I actually made $62,000. He got half of it because I was selling real estate in some of his developments. And then over the next 12 months, he had me learn some new skills around for sale by owners and expired listings, which is part of real estate. And I made $150,000 by learning the scripts that he taught me.
Wow.
I was off to the race. So you asked, how did I get involved in this? For the last 44 years, I've been wondering, researching how and what happened. How did it happen? What happened to my brain? This kid who was a high school derelict, didn't believe he was smart enough or good enough. D's and F's were my normal. How did I change? How is that possible? And I have been a student, thousands of books later, countless of training courses and research, at least an hour a day for 40 years. To understand me better, and in understanding me better, I've been able to share what I've discovered, the good, the bad, the ugly, with other people, of what works, why it works, and then how to do it so that it works for you.
Yeah, I relate so much to that story, that little kid in me, even in my early 20s, of just scraping by, surviving, not really knowing where I'm going to go, and paying the month's rent, barely scraping by. And I think about how hard it was for me to even envision what life would be like 5 years from now, what it would be like to earn X amount of income. Like, it was just so, I was drowning that it was hard to look up from the water and see what else opportunities that I could potentially have, or what type of life I could have. Why is it so hard for us as humans to think bigger than this glass ceiling that we've placed on ourselves, to be able to actually envision a bigger life for ourselves? Like, it seems so hard for the majority of the people that are having a difficult time in their life.
Yeah, so the reason it's difficult is no different than the reason it's difficult to drive a car in the Indianapolis 500 at 260 miles an hour. And here's the answer: because you have not been trained how to. Now, when you understand a few facts, every human brain is, in my opinion, worth, $100 billion. And most people have never received or got any training on how to use their brain a little bit better. So without knowing how to do it, without knowing what to do, without knowing why do it, without knowing how to shift your perspective, shift your attention, shift your focus, without knowing how, we are left ignorant. And when we have ignorance, just not knowing, then we repeat patterns. And so most people, are in a picture and you can't see yourself out of the picture because you've got this frame around you, and everywhere you go, that's where you are, and that's how you see the world. And we see the world as we are, not as it is. And there's only 4 things that hold us back. It's not 400. It's 4 things just based on how the human brain works. And so I like to start everybody off by asking a question. If you're watching or listening to this, just play along with me. So I'll give you a fact. There's been approximately 107, 108 billion human beings that have walked on our beautiful blue planet. Was any one of them, any one out of 107 billion, born with any beliefs, positive, negative, empowering, disempowering, constructive or destructive beliefs about anything?
Yes.
And Sean, you can answer.
Yes.
Yes? What beliefs was a baby born with? Any baby ever born?
A baby, no. Yes. When you're first born, none.
0 beliefs. All right. Number 2. Was any baby ever born with a self-image, self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence, or identity?
No.
No. Was any baby ever born with any fear? Fear of failure, fear of being embarrassed, ashamed, ridiculed, judged, rejected, abandoned, unloved, fear of disappointing themselves or their mama or papa? Any fear?
No.
No. Was any baby born with any skill or any knowledge?
If you call crying skill, maybe.
Skill.
Other than that, no.
It's an instinctual, right? It's a genetic propensity to suck and to cry when you're uncomfortable. But here is where we have to begin. What is holding you back? Not you, Sean, but what is holding me back? What is holding you back? Isn't it the beliefs that I have that are limiting me? Isn't it the fears that I have that are holding me hostage? Isn't it the self-image or self-worth that says maybe this is too big for you? Maybe because you don't have the knowledge or skills, that triggers fear, doubts, uncertainty, and that's what actually holds you back. So the question becomes can I, if those are the 4 things that hold me back, limiting beliefs, fears, self-image, and lack of knowledge and skills, if those are holding me back, could we agree that in 2025, right, we know how to do just about anything that anybody who's listening or watching wants to achieve in health, wealth, relationships, career, business, finance, fun, experiences, spirituality? We know how to get from here to here. So knowledge and skill is off the table because I can acquire the knowledge or skill, right? And now with AI, prevalent in our lives, I can have answers in seconds now. Fear. Isn't fear an emotion? And if fear is an emotion and I have emotions, I'm not my emotions, I have emotions, can I, if I'm committed, learn how to be aware of, then manage, and then master my emotions? Like a white belt in martial arts would begin, then maybe, yellow belt, and maybe you move up by getting better at managing emotions. Of course I could learn how to if I'm committed. If a belief in the human brain is nothing more than neurons, cells that created a connection, and the neurons that fired together and wired together and were reinforced because of my parents, my teachers, my mother, my father, my sister, my brother, whatever reason I developed this belief system, conditioning, can I deactivate or atrophy a neural network in the brain and deliberately create and reinforce a new one? And before anybody says no, think about this. If you learn 5 new words in a language you don't know, isn't that your brain firing the neurons? You're learning a new few words, and through repetition, you can learn that, water can be lo, or water can be mayim, or water can be a different name in a different language, but water is water and it has 5 different names in 5 different languages. Well, that is nothing more than a neural pattern that's been reinforced. That's what beliefs are. And then we talk about self-image. If we weren't born with a self-image, self-esteem, self-worth, it's a self-concept that we have acquired somehow, through our growth. Well, is it possible that a self-image is also nothing more than neurodes, right? Cells that connected, that then got reinforced, and now we have this self-concept? Well, is it possible to shift identities, create a new identity? And again, I tell people, before you say no, ask yourself this question. What do Hollywood actors and actresses master? They develop a new identity based on a script. Then they become that role because they practice that role. And perfect practice creates perfect memories or identities. So we can learn all of this stuff. We can bundle some of the old things that may be holding us back. And in a world where all the how-to is readily available at our fingertips now, I ask my students, if that's the truth, which I know it is, then why not you? Why not now? And let's set a big vision and goals that you have that'll make your life a masterpiece without you having to settle for less. That is what I learned literally starting in 1980, and I have not stopped the journey of self-discovery and brain research and research on the universe, energy, intelligence, or lack thereof. As I'm just passionate about it because it's transformed my life and the lives of hundreds of thousands of my students.
Let's unpack that because you said a lot of golden gems there. I'm listening to this let's say, from the perspective of the listener, and they're 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, and they're saying they've went through a life of hardship, learning certain behavioral patterns, being told that they're not X or Y or Z. And when you look at the average number of thoughts that we have, it's somewhere around like 60,000 apparently, and 40,000 or so, about 80% or so are negative for the average person. And
6,200 is the new number, just so you know.
6,200?
6,200 is the new number as of last year that has been scientifically validated, 80% of which are negative for the average person, and 90% are repeated day after day after day after day, thereby reinforcing the negative thought patterns, emotional patterns that become habitual and increase the size of the emotional control center of the brain, or the amygdala. So yes.
There you go. There you go. You said it perfectly.
Yeah.
And I think about where the root of that is. And some of these fears of being survived, like prioritizing our survival or looking out for ourselves, or like not thinking we're good enough. Some of these things are just out of protection because our ancestors have grown up through survival. And we have a way of protecting ourselves that goes back hundreds and thousands of years, which in my perspective, some of them are harder to unlearn than others. So what are some of your processes that you take clients through to help unbundle, as you mentioned, or unlearn some of these patterns that we've developed?
So you're 100% right. We have an ancient brain in the modern world. And therein lies the problem, because there's just so much information, so much stuff happening. But we also know the hierarchy of how our brain makes decisions And the process by which it makes decisions is safety, survival is number one on top of the list, right? It's like right up there with oxygen for us. So survival and safety. The very next layer is avoidance of real or imagined pain or discomfort or loss, something like that. The third highest priority of the brain, and it's really, really a tight race there, is because of number one and two, especially number one, the brain wants to conserve energy. So it actually wants to take the path of least resistance to make sure one and two happen, regardless of whether number two or one is real. It's anything that you believe might affect your survival or safety or cause you spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, or financial pain and discomfort. So it triggers, the sympathetic nervous system. And that sympathetic nervous system, when it activates, it sets up the fight, flight, or freeze mode part of the brain, which allows us to go back into a safe zone of protection to conserve energy and obviously to avoid any pain or discomfort. And the fourth priority is gaining, the pleasure, the joy, the thing that we want. So first and foremost, there's nothing wrong with the system, no differently than when you're driving your car and you have gas and you have brakes and you've got your gearbox to shift from, park to reverse to neutral to drive or whatever the case might be. But you also might have sensors in the car that tells you, hey, you're low on fuel. You like that, don't you? Hey, your right front tire is low on air. You like when that thing goes off on your dash, right? You don't take a hammer and hit it. Why? Because you like the early warning detection mechanism. Well, you have the most powerful detection mechanism, in the world. But most people, again, don't what I call is Innercise to strengthen their neuromuscles. And they just keep repeating patterns over and over and over and over again. So, for example, you asked me one of the things that I do. First and foremost, when the sympathetic nervous system, the fight, flight, freeze, the Frankie's monster we talked about, part of your brain goes off, your job isn't to let Frankie's monster run the show. Your job is to be aware that you're procrastinating, you're self-sabotaging, you're wasting time, you're unfocused, you're trying to do too many things at the same time. And the first thing you've got to learn how to do is stop. Stop for just a moment. We can do one of two things. There's something called the physiological sigh. And the physiological sigh, goes like this. You go, 4 of those. Breathe in deeply. Breathe in some more. Let it go. Breathe in. That's the physiological sigh. Or you can do what I call is take 6, calm the circuits. And this one's a little bit different because if you're in a public place, that one's a little hard to do. But if you want to just do this, if you're stressed out, you're worried, you're doubtful, you have negative self-talk, disempowering emotions, you're on the verge of panic, you breathe in as slowly as you can in through your nostrils. And then when you're breathing out, pretend you're breathing out through a straw and focus on the air coming out of your mouth. You do that 6 times, which will take you less than 1 minute. In slowly, slowly, slowly. It's calming the sympathetic nervous system. The system has got a vagus nerve, not Las Vegas, but VAGUS, vagus nerve. And it's broken down into 2 parts that come from the brain stem all the way down to your belly. Then it latches out to every other part of your body. When the sympathetic nervous system is active, you're in the fight, flight, freeze mode. All right. Your brain networks that are activated, are the ones for fight, flight, freeze. You're breathing shallow. You're myopic in your view. And as soon as you do the physiological sigh, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, or the take 6, calm the circuits, you deactivate that part of your brain and you reactivate the Einstein part of your brain, the CEO, the executive director, the orchestra leader of the brain. And since this brain has got a variety of different networks and circuits that you can activate or deactivate with a little bit of skill, you can now use that part of your brain to say, okay, what am I fearful of? What's stressing me out? Because stress, think about this, stress. It's when the demand exceeds your current capacity, that switch goes on. No different when you're boiling water, okay, for your tea. Okay, it might whistle when it gets to a certain temperature. Well, stress circuit goes on when the current demand or something you're thinking about in the future that you think you can't handle right now, that circuit gets activated. Well, why not just turn the circuit off? And why not operate from the smart part of your brain to say, okay, what's stressing me out? Well, I'm worried I can't pay the rent. I'm worried that I don't have enough, this. I just got into a car accident. I might get laid off. My business is crashing. Maybe all this is happening, or maybe this has happened. So here's the question. Let's say it's real. Let's say there's something to really be concerned about. Which part of your brain do you think will help you achieve a path to the solution? The worry, doubt, fear, stress, panic, what if negative part of your brain that perpetuates those negative thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, or the Einstein part of your brain that can say, well, what can I do about that right now? Who can help me? Can I go to ChatGPT and maybe come up with a plan? Can I do X? Can I do Y? Now we get into possibility of solutions versus exacerbating the problem that in most cases is in our imagination. So here's my question for everybody. Do you think with a little practice, you could get better at this? Now, you're either going to say, yes, I can, or no, I can't. Or yes, I want to, no, I don't. But the mechanisms for more awareness is mindfulness. Mindfulness has to happen in a calm, relaxed state. And you can do it interoceptively, mindfulness, awareness of what's happening within me. Or I could do something called exteroception, be aware of what's happening around me. And when I learn how to do both without, and this is critical. You asked me what I teach my students. I work with professional athletes, CEOs, entrepreneurs, homemakers, it doesn't matter. Without judging yourself, blaming yourself, feeling ashamed or guilty or embarrassed. No, awareness is to observe a pattern without labels, without activating positive or negative emotions or feelings. The observation of a pattern happens no differently than a radiologist, taking an X-ray and going, here's what I see. In the observation of the pattern, we can ask questions, and the power of our questions will determine how we feel, or the meaning we give things will determine how I feel. So can I learn to give things a meaning that empower me instead of disempower me?
Yeah, I listen to that. I listen to that and I think about even myself sometimes where it's hard for me to separate the thoughts that I have and the identity that I am. When you're going through a stressful moment of putting out fires in your business, in your personal life, and things are going around, and you have these oftentimes negative thoughts or limiting beliefs, and you think that that's you. But what sometimes I have to think about when I have to take a step back is that you are not your thoughts. One of my favorite quotes from Nietzsche is that conviction is the greater enemy of truth than lies. And I interpret that as someone not really being, living a life that's unexamined, really, and making sure that you're self-aware of those thoughts. But that seems to be where some people get stuck, right? Is that people, when they're running through the motions of their lives, they don't stop to think about, oh, this is like these thoughts that are coming in, the 80% of the negative thoughts that are coming in are not who I really am. These are just survival mechanisms that have been embedded into my brain. And it seems like we have to first learn how to be self-aware of those. So how can people become more self-aware and take a step back from what's been coming into their brains?
Great. So let's back up for just 1 second, and I'll give you maybe a different frame to think about thoughts. Human brain has 85 billion brain cells. Think of it like brain cells like a marble. Every marble is connected to 7,000 other marbles. So 85 billion times 7,000 on average is trillions of connections, memories, thoughts, ideas, experiences, fetishes, likes, dislikes throughout your life, right? Because you weren't born with any memories. Maybe you're born with some memories, when you're in your mother's womb. And maybe we bring forth with us memories, from our ancestry, maybe. Some people believe so. I do too. But for the most part, we have all these memories, right? And our brain is always in a protective modality. Safety, security first. So anything real or imagined that could cause you pain, suffering, loss, damage in any area of your life, your brain is wiring that for survival and safety for future needs, right? A rat will pass on her memories of a traumatic event right now to her next offspring, just for clarity's sake. So she will pass on a roadmap to a maze where food is that might have taken her 10 hours to figure out so that her offspring can go there in 20 minutes. So there is a genetic predisposition and coding that happens there. But let's just say I have 6,200 thoughts a day. And it's coming from my memory bank, right? From my memory, from the neurons firing because I smell something, I see something, I hear something, I imagine something, and these neurons just percolate up. What if we thought of thoughts as bubbles in an aquarium? Let's say there's an aquarium and there's bubbles coming in from the bottom of the aquarium. There's fish going around and there's blue bubbles and red bubbles. And the red bubbles represent the disempowering negative thoughts that we have. And the blue bubbles represent the positive, empowering, encouraging thoughts. And what if we played this game? My job is to be aware of the bubbles, but not pick the red ones to chew on and think about and give them more energy because then they double in size. So I can be aware of the thought. And when I see a red bubble pop up, I could just say, great, let me replace it with 3 positive blue bubbles and blue dots. So I replaced the negative with the positive, and all of a sudden, within a short period of time, from 80%, I go down to 75, then 70, then 65, then 55, then 40. And through practice, I'm deliberately creating more blue, empowering, constructive, powerful bubbles. But what I'm learning throughout this entire process is just to be aware of the bubbles, but not identify with them because they're there. The good ones, the bad ones, the sadistic ones, the crazy ones that we have, the secret fetish ones that we have, the nastiest thoughts we ever have, they're there. That's not who you are. You have thoughts, you're not your thoughts. You have emotions, you're not your emotions. You have a heart, you're not your heart. You have a brain, you're not your brain. You have fingers, you're not your fingers. We have those things. So now, if I can just say, oh, there's another negative thought. And what if I just said, next, replace with positive, positive, positive. Make it a game. What happens is if you grew up like I did in a negative environment where lying, stealing, cheating, hardship, hitting, beating, lack of was the norm, I had to learn how to use that to my advantage. And I just decided to practice getting better at it. And it's not going to happen in a weekend. So whoever thinks, yeah, I'll do it this weekend. It ain't going to happen. So just understand that you can reverse some of this stuff. No differently than if you're 100 pounds overweight, you can stop eating certain foods. You can start eating certain foods. You can stop drinking certain things. You can start sleeping better. You can start exercise. You can start moving more. And you go from 100 to 98 to 97 to 95 to 94. And you can release that weight, but you have to be committed to the process. So you're either going to be a victim of your negative thoughts and your ignorance and your lack of commitment, or you're going to get disciplined, and you're either going to pay the price of a little discipline now, or you're going to pay the price of a lot of regret later. And, they say that hard now, easy later. Easy now, hard later. So all of the how-to for everything you're asking, we already know the answers, but it's not reserved for people who are just like reading about it and like watching it. It's for people who are committed to, let's do this. Come on, I'm committed to my goals, to my vision, to my life, to my time. So which are you, listener, right? Are you interested? Are you playing the game of life, as an amateur? Is the game of life a hobby for you? Well, guess what? If it's a hobby for you, it's going to cost you like a hobby. But if you play the game of life like a pro, amateurs practice, until they get it right once or twice or three times. You know what pros do? They practice until they can't get it wrong. So how are you going to play life? You're not making enough money? Why? I mean, there's more than enough quintillions of wealth. Why not? You know how to make more money. You're not already doing what you could be doing. You're not in the best shape of your life. How come? How come? Your relationship is going down the drain. How come? What part do you have in it? What are you missing? How are you behaving? What are you not doing? What should you be doing that you're not doing? Is it always her? Is it always him? Is it always it? Oh, you're a victim then. Play your life like a victim. Okay. You don't have to. That's the stuff that I have discovered and learned. And like everything else, there's foundational things you can do. And, the work that I do around my Innercises for health, wealth, relationship, career, business, finance, sales, leadership, all starts off with self-image and identity. It continues with what would you need to believe? Then it continues, right, with what's the knowledge and skill that you need to achieve that thing that you want, because it's doable. And then how do we set you up? How do you set yourself up to develop that discipline versus the disciplines you're already committed to? Somebody said, I don't have the discipline. I said, bullshit. You're 100% disciplined to your current disciplines.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes, I think you recently quoted him as well, as from Bruce Lee, where he talks about, I have the quote here, which is, don't speak negatively about yourself, even as a joke. Your body doesn't know the difference. Words are energy and cast spells. That's why it's called spelling. Change the way you speak about yourself, and you can change your life. What you're not changing, you're also choosing. And this reminds me of this quote, oftentimes people don't make a decision. They put off the decision. But by putting it off, you're actually making a decision by not making the decision.
Yeah.
And
not action is an action.
Yes.
Yeah, totally agree. And then you also know, the letter that Bruce Lee wrote himself, right? About the vision that he wanted to create, and he created. He became it.
Yeah, right? And I think about great leaders like that. And I think about warriors even, right? The warriors that are courageous are not those that don't feel the fear and go into battle. They're the ones that feel the fear, but they go into battle anyways. That's the courageous part. And I feel some people get stuck because, and this was certainly myself, is that they feel a little bit of hardship. They feel a little bit of the negativity, or they don't get the rewards fast enough from making the changes that they have in their lives. And then they quit, or they stop too early. And resilience is such a critical part, I feel, to make the change and persist when times are inevitably going to get tough. where can you direct people to building the resilience when things are definitely going to get tough, when you're starting to make big changes in your life?
Yeah, before it gets tough. You see, when you learn to ride a bike, usually there's somebody teaching you. And what do? If you learn to ride a horse or a bike, they go, oh, get back on. It's going to take you some time. When you learn to tie your shoes, when you learn to brush your teeth, when you learn to eat food, you failed. You failed forward, because every part of the learning process involves failure. And we're all clumsy beginners at first, and it's uncomfortable. So first and foremost, is having some tools to use and say, okay, great. Here is the thing I want to achieve. When I fail, when this or this or this or this or this happens, can I choose in advance how I will respond instead of react? When times are tough, financially, physically, mentally, relationally, can I choose to be resilient, to have tenacity, to have resolve in advance? Can I create that as part of my identity? I was watching Arnold Schwarzenegger on Netflix the other night, just the story of his life. Comes from Austria, big guy, wants to act. Everybody says you're not an actor, you're too big, you're a bodybuilder, you're this or that. And his first couple of things failed and flopped, and people told him to get out of acting. And he says, but quitting wasn't in my plan. Nowhere on my plan, on my goals, was the word quitting. So he created the identity of not being a quitter in advance, and he just figured it out. Mm. So here's my question for everyone. Can you deliberately choose, create a new empowered identity right now? And can you reinforce that through creating a new story? I'm so happy that my new identity is blank and my character traits are blank. And the way I react or behave and think and feel is blank, 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 blank. And when things don't work out, here is how I handle it. And when I feel like quitting, I do this. And can't you create a story and then impress that story into your subconscious mind, which is where the identity is, and then create the beliefs, the character traits, the behaviors, and just get started with a little bit each day being that person? Well, of course we can. Why not choose that in advance? All of my students in my business coaching programs, my money coaching programs, one of the first things we do, day one, day 2 or 3, right, is we're going to create a new story, a new business story, a new money story, a new story for your life. I had it over here. Oh, right over here. This is my Exceptional Life Blueprint. It's one of my programs. And if you were to look at, I've got guiding principles for my life, and these are some new ones I'm adding to this, my working copy. But the story of my life is all written down. For health, wealth, relations, career, business, beliefs, financial, everything is written down into a story. Then I record the story, and I listen to the story, and then I create vision and goals and behaviors and strategies to make the story my masterpiece. Mm. So I start off with the vision and goals.
Now, how is that different than, the person that's sitting on the couch? We all seen those people that have a mindset, oh, I'm a millionaire. They self-enforce, I'm going to attract money into my life, but they don't actually, nothing really happens a year later. They've done the work that you mentioned of creating the story. They've enforced, attracting new people into their lives. They want more money. They want a business. But a year later, nothing happens. What is the difference between those people versus the process that you take them through?
Sure. When I was in the movie The Secret that about 700 million people saw, we talked about the law of attraction, right? And it's think, believe, and you'll achieve. Well, that's bullshit. But with the law of attraction also comes this law that nobody learns. And you may have heard it, you may not have, Sean, but it's the law of GOYA. Have you heard of that? Yeah. The law of GOYA states,
Get off your ass.
yeah. And so, but let's take it one step further. Give me a second. I'll show you something. Get off your ass. Let's say you have a goal to solve the Rubik's Cube. And you get off your ass. Okay, I've got a vision of solving the Rubik's Cube. And you do, you're going left, right, up, down, this way, that way, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, like, I can't do this. Do you know why most people don't solve the 3x3? There's 43 quintillion possible moves. Real number. 43. So, yeah, 43 trillion or quintillion? 43 trillion, sorry. So that means that hard work is not where it's won or lost. It's actually knowing the algorithm of what to do in what order. So being active is very different than being productive. And if you want to learn the Rubik's Cube, you can solve any Rubik's Cube you want.
Wow.
Either with a coach, with an expert, maybe a book, maybe a weekend event, because everything that you and I want to do, you want to lose 20 pounds of fat, put on 10, 15 pounds of muscle, run a marathon, build $1 million business. Like, don't we know how to do that? Can't we get the step-by-step, hour-by-hour plan of exactly what we need to do? I can hop on ChatGPT or Claude or any one of the AI tools right now, and I can say, okay, I'm 63. Here's my life situation. Here's what's working. Here's what's not working. But here's my vision. Here are some of my goals. Help me create a step-by-step, detailed plan for 7 days a week for the next 3 months. Could I not have that literally in 3 minutes? If I want AI to tutor me, or I want to go see a 5-year-old kid on YouTube explaining to me the algorithm, I could do that, right? So it's not just a matter of hoping, praying, wishing, and being clear on your goals. Yes, you need that. But we also need to know what are the right actions, in what order, in what time frame. That's the other part of the equation. And most people have some of the combination or none of it. And we understand that when we don't have, let's say, the knowledge, the skills, or the process, it actually activates doubt, fear, worry, anxiety, stress, and that causes us to do what? Stay in our comfort zone. So we know the neuromechanics of this. So most people, because they may be lacking the resources, have not learned how to be resourceful. And that's a skill that you can learn. How can I be resourceful? Who can help me? Who knows the answer to this? What tool can I use? How do I get better at ChatGPT? Because I don't know. I don't know how to use ChatGPT. Just go to ChatGPT, say, I don't know how to use you. Help me use you better. It'll do it. So the only thing people have, right, is what I call is the inflammation disease of choice. The drug disease of choice is hopium. They hope things are going to get better. And the inflammation disease is called excusitis. They're living a life filled with excuses, and it gets inflamed and inflamed and inflamed. Before they know it, their stories, reasons, and excuses causes their identity to be less than. It causes them to believe I can't. It causes them to believe I don't know how. It causes them to believe things that are not true. And then we act and find all of the evidence for what we believe.
Yeah. I want to circle back to the first story you told when your mentor came to you and asked what you want for your life. And this is so common for most people when oftentimes they're not, either we haven't thought about the things that we really want, or there's a glass ceiling that's always been placed, whether it's through media, whether it's through parents, family, friends, people around. There's just this limitation that's been set. And I want to talk about breaking frames a little bit, because I think sometimes if we don't know the right questions to ask, then we have all the resources, as you mentioned. We just don't know how to place that into the right direction. And I think you had a post, which is some of the biggest mistakes that people make when we set goals. Talk to us a little bit about that and just breaking frames that's been constrained into our little box our whole lives.
So most people set goals by looking at their education, high school, university, vocation. They set goals based on current circumstances, what I know, what I don't know, the marketplace. And they set goals based on what they believe they might be able to achieve. And that's one way to set goals. And you're surely, going to either take action in alignment with those goals. But some people recognize that I have this powerful brain. Like what most people don't think about, which I do, is like, as you and I are talking right now, you're talking to that. I'm talking to years of that. It's an electromagnetic switching station, right? So I'm talking to this phenomenally intelligent biocomputer. And I own one. Like our creator gave me one. And so how do I use it better? And here's the question. Could I use one of the faculties of my mind called imagination to dream? Like if I couldn't fail, if I couldn't get hurt, if I couldn't, like what would I dream? If I dared you to dream, write out what you would love to do, be, have, experience. Just write it out. Like forget about any consequences that might hurt you, right? Like where would you want to go? Who would you want to help? How much wealth would you like to accumulate? Where would you like to travel? How would you love to feel? How would you love to look? Right? Like why not just dare to imagine? Let's just start with that. And let's say you did that. Let's say you said, okay, I'll play along, John. I said, well, isn't that called a vision? For some of you would love to have, do, be, experience. Yeah, okay, great. What would you need to believe? Just play along with me. What would you need to believe in order to make that a possibility, but more of a predictability? What would you need to believe about yourself? And what would you need to believe about being that it's possible to do that? Right? We have people like Elon Musk that want to colonize Mars, and he believes he can do it. Therefore, he's working on it, right? We have people that believed back in the early 60s that we could put a man on the moon and bring them home safely. And then we did it in 1968, I believe, right? So what would you need to believe in order to have, do, be, experience the vision that's not real right now, just an imagination? What would you need to believe? Great. What would you need to learn, like to move you towards that? Like, what would you need to learn? What would you need to learn about yourself? What would you need to learn about how to achieve that? Who could help you if you were serious about it? Like, who could help you? What could help you? Could you, I'm going to keep going back to AI, could you go to AI and put this pie in the sky dream with all of your particulars and all of your challenges and all that stuff and say, can you help me chart a course for the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days so that I can get closer to that? And that is no different, Sean, than if I said to everybody who's watching or listening, can you jog a marathon right now? Running shoes, shorts, shirt right now. I'm in killer shape at 63. I can't run a marathon right now. But my question for everybody else is, could you run a marathon right now? And if the answer is yes, great. You've probably been practicing because you don't normally run a marathon without being in killer shape for a marathon. But what if we said a year from now, all of us are going to get together and we are going to run the Vancouver or the Boston or the New York Marathon together. And we're just going to go at our own pace, and we're going to cross the finish line together as a group. Could we not say, yes, let's do that, and then let's have a phenomenal party in Central Park, okay, at the end of it, and we're going to celebrate, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and we're going to get these awards, and we're going to raise money for the charities of our dreams, and we create this vision. Could we not start today to say, well, what should I do today? Should I go for a 3-minute walk? Should I start to stretch a little bit today? Is there a certain food I should eat today and maybe give up some food? Is there a certain sleep pattern that I should maybe adopt? Should I exercise 2 times a week or 5 times a week? Should I like, what's the plan from wherever you are right now? And you can be out of shape, 100 pounds overweight. If we made a commitment to a year from now, could every one of us not learn the pieces of the puzzle specifically for us? And would we get better if we followed that plan in 30 days and then 30 more days and 30 more days? Wouldn't we be in better shape 90 days from now, physically, mentally, emotionally, if we followed a proper plan? And here's what I know. 99% of us that were committed to following the plan for us will run across that finish line together a year from now. So let's come full circle. What's holding you back is not your circumstance. What's holding you back is your decisions. What's holding you back is your lack of resourcefulness. What's holding you back is asking the wrong questions. What's holding you back is not your knowledge or your skill. It's your choices. And what makes us different than a pig or a horse is us humans have the ability to choose. And it's the awareness that gives us choice. And it's the choices that can buy our freedom, where we feel that the time that we use in our lives, when we use this time properly here to focus on the biggest, best version of ourselves for health, wealth, relationship, career, business, fun, charities, all that stuff, that we look back in time and we go, yeah, what a freaking great journey. And guess what you'll remember? You'll remember all the things that you thought were hard, that with practice and some skill, you kicked its ass. And that's what gave you the ability to do the things that you're dreaming of right now. Because success is not reserved for everybody. Success is reserved for those who are committed and disciplined to doing what it takes. End of story. That's it.
Love it. Love it. Before I get to my final question, John, I just want to share my gratitude for just this energy, this kick-ass energy that you've brought. I mean, I started drinking coffee in the beginning of this interview, and then I just stopped because your energy was just fueling this entire conversation. So I'm grateful for how much energy you bring to every interview. I mean, I've seen your other interviews, and you bring it. So I love that. I want to make sure people check out your work as well. MyNeuroGym.com. We're going to have all the links below either way, but I want to make sure people check that out. Innercise as well. You have an app as well now.
I do.
Which was started as a book, Innercise. Anything else we should point people to that is something that you're prioritizing these days?
If they like to read, go to johnassaraf.com. I write blogs all the time, just killer stuff to give you perspective and how to. We have a ton of interviews, lots of YouTube channel videos, Instagram every day. I post 2-3 times a day. I've got several New York Times best-selling books, Having It All if you want to learn how to set and achieve goals. If you have a business, pick up my New York Times bestseller, The Answer to Grow Any Business. If you want to really master your mindset and goal achievement, definitely pick up Innercise. And pick up the app. The app has, I think, 525 brain training exercises for leadership, health, sales, wealth, relationships, self-image, self-worth, self-esteem, confidence, and it is a game changer. The App Store reviews are off the chain. I think 4.9 out of 5 stars.
Wow,
I think there's 20 some odd thousand people Innercising daily now. We just released it just under a year ago.
That's amazing. Well, we'll have all of that linked below. My final question and lead way into this is kind of summarizing everything that we talked about is when oftentimes we're getting in our own heads, we're allowing our inner thoughts, the negative inner thoughts, to preventing us from taking action. There's all of these things that are kind of at our obstacles. One of these that I think some people, actually most people go through, is escaping this torturous mind of in order for us to play the game of you versus you. And that is oftentimes we have social influences, whether it's our parents or family or friends, that judge us for the actions that we're trying to take in our lives. And oftentimes, there's, I think being understood generally is overrated if you're trying to carve your own path. And there's this quote that I love, which is, those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. And I love that because I have this visual of people dancing in the rain with their silent disco music, and people just don't get it from the outside. And I think in order to do that, we have to stop caring what other people think. How can we stop caring what other people think to truly achieve inner and external freedom?
That's such a beautiful question, because that will stop when you start caring about what you think about you. When you think about you and remember what created you, the intelligence that created you and me, 100 trillion of these cells made up of hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, that were made in the furnace of a star. The gold within you, the iron in your body was made in the furnace of a star. And somehow, imagine this. Imagine a printing, like a New York or Boston or Vancouver printing factory. They print books. Imagine it explodes, a huge explosion, and all of the ink and all of the paper and all of the ribbons, everything just explodes into smithereens. And then a mile away, this book gets cola, and there's a book made up of this explosion. Would you go, holy fuck, how the hell did that happen? Well, that's you. That's me. This miracle that I am, that you are, was somehow created by whatever you want to call it. I don't know what you want to call it. Do I call it God? Fine. I'm not religious, but I do believe in this intelligent force that created me and everything else. That's me. Wow. I'm going to have the healthiest respect for me, love for me, appreciation for me, gratitude for me. And then I'm going to have the same appreciation and gratitude for you, because that's who you are. You may not know it, but that's what I believe I am. And then if you can't see that in me, that's okay. I love you. I appreciate you. You are spectacular and wonderful beyond your wildest imagination. And I'm going to be that beacon so that you see something in me that's already in you, that you want to be more like. And then you will work towards discovering that and peeling off all of the stuff that's there because of ignorant parents and teachers and society that hasn't invested in uncovering the truth. Because this sentient being that I am, that you are, made up of these 9 systems and 100 trillion cells and 85 billion brain cells that create my consciousness, that allow me to experience life, is so unfreaking believably powerful. In a humble way, I want to operate and emanate from that. And what you think of me is really not of any importance. I hope you love me. I hope you like me, but I don't need you to, because I love me and I like me.
Mm.
And when you emanate from there, my mother's, my father's, my sister's, my brother's opinion of me, they own that. I have such a kind, loving, caring opinion of me. And again, not ego. I'm talking about just an appreciation that I don't need you to.
So beautifully said.
Let's start with that. So let's think enough about me that it doesn't matter what you think of me. But if you see that I think enough about me, maybe you'll say, hey, can you show me how you're doing that so that I don't have my insecurities and my negative, disempowering, destructive thoughts about me because I'm projecting it onto you?
Beautiful.
And so that's where it's be the change, right, Gandhi? Be the change. Be the light. Be the confidence. Be the love. Be the kindness. Be the compassionate. Be the warrior, right? Bring forth those character traits that are in all of us, and just show me. Don't tell me. Show me. Show me. And magic happens.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you too, Sean. Thanks for being prepared, and thanks for doing this with me, because I love to share, and hopefully one person's mind got expanded a bit today.
I have no doubt about that. It was such a beautiful conversation. Appreciate you.